I'm the only one who can take care of my mental health or prioritize it. Like nobody else can force me to go to therapy or do the things that I need to feel safe and grounded and okay. We have to be on our own side and have our own back in this journey.
Yasmin, welcome. To start, please tell us a little bit about your cultural and religious background.
So my name is Yasmin Irfani, and I am a Pakistani Muslim American. So I'm from the South Asian community, and even within South Asians and Muslims, there is so much diversity, and it's a spectrum. So I can't speak for all, but I will speak from my own experience.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us. We're so excited to have you. What are some barriers you have seen in the Muslim community regarding mental health?
So some of the barriers I've seen in the Muslim community regarding mental health are stigma. There's a huge fear of what will people think, what will they say, and not bringing shame to the family, similar to many other cultures. Also, misinformation is a barrier, like people thinking that, if you're struggling with your mental health, that means you have a lack of faith in God. And you probably aren't praying enough or reading the Quran enough and all those kinds of things. And also like the lack of Muslim therapists or different therapists who can speak in various languages and accessibility. So those are just some of the many barriers.
Thanks for sharing that. Are there any doctrinal aspects to seeking mental health care?
So in terms of doctrinal aspects to seeking mental health care, Islam is all for it. With the Muslim scholars and mentors that I've had, and I've shared my own mental health challenges, they completely validate my feelings, and they show that it's a good thing to take care of your mind in the same way that we take care of our body. So it's all about like misinformation, right? Islam definitely promotes good mental health care and seeking treatment.
That's really good to hear. Very important. Is the mental health experience for Muslim women and men different?
So when it comes to the mental health experience of Muslim men and women, in general, I do think that it's challenging for both, but there's different challenges. So due to toxic masculinity, it may be less common for men to seek out therapy compared to women. And as a result, a lot of times women have to do the emotional labor for not only the men, but also themselves and children and the community. So like even in our faith tradition, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was a huge mental health advocate, and he was very empathetic and sensitive, and he would be able to cry. So he was a great role model for men and women, but unfortunately, due to culture and society, I do think the toxic masculinity gets in the way of males seeking help compared to women.
That seems very true just for any religion or just secular society. Like men, I think there's this stereotype that men have to be strong and always in control and not let their emotions show. But I do see society gravitating towards like embracing men's wellness and embracing opening up. And there's more communities like Movember or Men's Health, or communities where men are supporting other men to be more vulnerable. So, and I also see that, I'm not sure if it's something I've said here before, but I also have seen that in pop culture, and like including movies and TV, there are more scenes of men crying, which if you look back at 90s movies, you did not see that. So, or at least I didn't see it. So I do think society is trying to portray men's emotionality a bit more openly than they used to in the past.
Definitely. I agree. And I think change takes time and it's a slow process, but we are moving in the right direction.
For sure. So as someone who's Muslim, is it hard to see a therapist who isn't practicing your religion?
So I can only speak for my own personal experience, but as a Muslim, I have had non-Muslim therapist, and it was super helpful and very healing. Most of the therapists I had were not Muslim. But now that I have a Muslim therapist, I see how much more beneficial it is to me because I don't have to explain a lot of things which she just understands because of our commonality. So I think it really depends on the person. Some people prefer their own faith therapist, some people don't. But for me, both worked. And I'm just grateful that I had that safe space, regardless of the religion.
I agree. Like, for example, for me, like my therapist is Jewish, but I feel like because I'm not very religious, it doesn't make so much of a difference. Like we know when the same holidays that we celebrate are, but like other than that, I don't live like by practicing any Jewish law like in my life day to day. And then also as someone who's pansexual, which means I don't care about gender expression. Basically, or I should phrase it, which means I'm open to relationships with any gender expression. And my therapist isn't in the LGBTQ plus community, but it doesn't really matter. Although I'm sure if she was, I might feel a certain level of closeness that I probably don't get right now. But it's true. It's like, it doesn't, at the end of the day, what's more important is like the support and the information and the education and the space they hold for you more than the commonalities matter, at least for me.
Exactly.
Speaking of therapy, is seeking therapy stigmatized in the Muslim community?
Yes. So unfortunately, seeking therapy is generally stigmatized in the Muslim community, as with pretty much any other community, right? If you're human, there is stigma with mental health. But I do think we're getting better because when I was growing up in the 90s, I didn't really see mental health or wellness related events or lectures going on in the mosques or Islamic centers. But now it's much more common. So I do have that sense of hope that even though it's taking quite some time and there's a lot more work that we need to do, we are moving in the right direction.
That's great. So do you have any words of advice for Muslims seeking mental health care?
So the words of advice that I would give to any of my Muslim sisters and brothers seeking mental health care is to please don't give up or lose hope. I know it can be a long process at times and it takes a lot of time. It can take a lot of time and energy, but it's worth it. And therapy does make a difference if you are matched with a good therapist that you feel safe with. So just because it might not work out at one point in your life, don't give up. You can always try again with somebody else, and you matter and you're worth it. And one of the books that I actually like to recommend to my community is Secrets of Divine Love by A.A. Helwa. And that one, paired with therapy, really helped me with my own healing because I grew up with this fear-based version of Islam rather than the love-based. And so when I read bits and pieces of this book, it reminds me that no matter what challenges I have or the dark shadow sides of myself that I don't like, I'm still loved by God. And I think faith can be a really big protective factor. And it's about focusing on the love and hope rather than the fear and the shame.
Yeah, that's definitely important. Yeah, love is everything. And I'd say when it comes to therapy, yeah, you might not get the therapist of your dreams in the first shot. I personally, when I'm looking for a new therapist, find 5 who fit my criteria. And then it's like an audition. And I do a 20 to 30 minute consultation call and then decide who I connect with best. And one thing I make sure to ask is if they're comfortable and feel confident in their ability to help me with my specific needs. So that means I know what I'm coming to therapy for and what exactly I'm hoping the outcome will be. And then for the same thing goes for medication. It took me, I think, 2.5, 3 years to find the right combination of medication I need for bipolar 1 disorder. And having patience in the process of trial and error and working closely with a psychiatrist I trust was super key, because it could be easy to lose hope and say, this isn't working, nothing works for me, and just be hopeless. But at the end of the day, there are so many different medications and so many types of combinations, and different medications work differently for different people. So it's just important to remember it is a process, and you will in time fight the right prescriptions that you need between therapy and medications if you take them.
Absolutely. And that also reminds me that something I always need to remind myself and others is that I'm the only one who can take care of my mental health or prioritize it. Like, nobody else can force me to go to therapy or do the things that I need to feel safe and grounded and okay. So it really comes down to like feeling that we are worthy and enough to get good care.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be on our own side and have our own back in this journey.
So true. And that's something that I feel like is a common thread in all of these, most of these conversations. People say like, yeah, it's kind of up to me. If I want to get well, if I want to take care of my mental health, I'm the person responsible. And I feel like depending on your personality, that could either be a daunting task or the most empowering thing to hear and say. But really it is up to us. And even our support system is up to us, like selecting the right people that we want to be as active members in our support system, and taking care of ourselves and making our mental health a priority. It is up to us, and we do all have the power to do it.
Definitely. And I think that since we live in this society of wanting instant gratification and quick results, it can be difficult because things don't happen overnight. Like, just going to one therapy appointment is not going to heal everything from the past. So it's a process. And I think we need to be really gentle and tender with ourselves in the process.
That's for sure. I've been in therapy for 13 years and I'm still growing and learning every day. When it comes to your community, are there any last things you would like to say about how to be helpful?
So when it comes to what I would say to my Muslim community, I would share to really please focus on listening. I think this is something we all really need practice in, because in our culture, it's more of a habit to jump in and give advice and lectures like, oh, you should do this, or you should read this ayah of the Quran. And that might be helpful, but there's a time and place for that. A lot of times, the best gift we can give is a listening ear and being compassionate and non-judgmental in the process. So it sounds simple, but it's a practice, and it saves lives too. Like, if you look at the most extreme example, of, for example, Kevin Briggs at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge, before they started building the suicide barrier, he talked down over 200 people from jumping off the bridge and dying by suicide by listening to them, not lecturing them or advising them or telling them that it's wrong or any of that. So I think that sometimes we overthink and overcomplicate things, but really just listen. And when in doubt, you can ask the person in front of you, what do you need right now? How can I support you in this moment? And then move on or proceed how they respond.
For sure. It's so true. Most people just want to be heard and validated and listened to. And I think that the receiver most times genuinely just wants to be helpful and thinks trying to solve their problems with advice and feedback is going to help them, instead of just being an active listener and saying, I hear you, I see you, and asking inquisitive questions to get them to go deeper into their emotions and maybe lead them towards finding their own resolution. I find sometimes I do that with friends when I try to be an active listener and ask them questions that get them closer to their own answers. And then if I feel it's appropriate, I might say, hey, are you telling me this because you're hoping for any feedback from me? Would you like my advice? And before laying it on them, getting their go ahead, yeah, I want some advice. That's why I came to you, because sometimes friends do come to you for advice. So differentiating like, hey, is this a listening conversation where you want me to be a receiver, or do you want me to respond and just letting them decide rather than you deciding for them. Being a problem solver and coming in with all these solutions can sometimes be invalidating to the person who just wants to be heard out.
Exactly. Kevin Hines says that as humans, we either want to fix it or we want to feel it. Those are the two areas, like the problem solving or the feeling and being expressed. So I think that's why I love the question of like, what do you need right now? Because each of us are different.
So true.
I also wanted to add that I think good intentions are not enough. So when it comes to my community, I really think that we need to be educated because our intention might be to help, but we can really be hurting the people around us and shutting the door to important conversations, which can lead to a crisis or, God forbid, suicide. So I think there's a difference between like intention versus impact, and it's each person's responsibility to become educated, especially when we have access to the resources.
So true. Thank you. Okay, so what is your mental health journey and what led you to this career path?
So when it comes to my mental health journey, I grew up as a highly sensitive person and I had really deep, big feelings, but in my community and family, people didn't really know how to support me. And so I did have some situational depression and anxiety at different parts of my life. And I thought that there was something wrong with me. So thankfully, when I was in college as a psychology student, I saw that they had free therapy. So I thought, okay, let me sign up because clearly I need fixing. And I think there's something wrong with me and how I feel so deeply. And once I started that, I started like healing and unlearning some of the mistaken beliefs that I had internalized. And then I decided, okay, well, I want to help other people. Let me become a therapist myself. So I did my master's in college counseling and student services from Cal State Northridge. But then I realized that it's really hard to do therapy and for me to do that full time and then take care of my own personal life as well, it's a lot. So instead, I pivoted towards more of being an educator and someone who can be a mental health advocate and connect people to the therapists. So I feel really blessed and privileged that I had access to good therapy. And now I feel like it is my responsibility to share my voice and get to as many people as possible. Because when I was growing up, I didn't see people who looked like me talk openly and vulnerably about their mental health. And I felt really alone. So that's a bit of my journey.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so coping skills. What are your favorite coping skills?
So some of my favorite coping skills for my mental health are prayer and talking to God. My faith is really huge for me, first and foremost. Another coping tool is mindfulness and breathing, really grounding myself, although I need to do this more, I'm not going to lie. And pairing that with positive self-talk and affirmations. So some of my go-tos are telling myself I am safe and I am supported. And then I also really like to go for walks. It clears my mind and helps me think more rationally. Then I really love journaling as well to see what all the chaos that's going on in my mind onto paper. It can really be therapeutic for me. And lastly, helping other people. So being able to be of service to others in my community, that is a way that I cope because it reminds me that we're all connected and we're all one. And it gets me out of my own head.
That's beautiful. Yeah, so important between grounding techniques, reflection, getting in nature, movement, community. All of those things are so integral to our healing process. Also faith, very important. What are some valuable lessons you have learned in therapy?
I've learned so many lessons through therapy, but one of them is that my feelings and experiences are all valid. So learning how to validate myself and be kind to myself has been life-changing, and it allows me to get out of bed and do what I do, even when I still struggle with my anxiety and depression. And therapy has taught me that there's nothing wrong with me. I am a human being, and every person on this planet has parts of themselves that sometimes feel unlovable or hard to accept. And the more that I can be open and vulnerable myself, it can give other people permission to do the same. And then we can create these beautiful, authentic relationships. So there's so much, but that's been huge for me, to be able to have a more positive relationship with myself.
I so relate to that, especially the self-validation part, because for me growing up, I wasn't given a lot of room to express myself emotionally. And then I found in relationships, especially romantic relationships, when I'd have turmoil and challenges, I would question if my reaction or feelings were appropriate for the situation. And I often found myself calling my older sister to say, hey, this person did this and I feel like this, is that okay? And like double checking that my reaction is appropriate, because I didn't trust my own feelings to guide me and I didn't know, like I didn't have a compass saying like, you're allowed to feel this way. It was like uncomfortable feelings. Are they appropriate? Or is this acceptable? Am I allowed to react this way? And then the more comfortable I got expressing myself and aligning with my own feelings and allowing them to move through me and to express myself, the more comfortable I got with saying like, if I feel this way, this is how I feel. And I don't need anyone else to validate. I can go to someone else for support, but they're not there to tell me that my feelings are right or wrong. If I have the feeling, it's right. There's no right or wrong. It is a feeling. It just is. And just learning how to accept that and not seek validation from outer sources.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that is so good. And to this day, sometimes my own inner child gets triggered and she feels like she needs to gain the approval or acceptance about my emotions and how I'm living life. And then I need to remind myself, okay, like I'm 30 years old, I'm safe, I am in charge of my life and my feelings, and I'm okay. Like that wanting to turn to others and be like, am I okay? Are these feelings okay? And instead to be able to give that to oneself, this needs to be taught in school, honestly.
I think self-validation ties in so well with self-regulation. It's like learning how to regulate and accept what you're going through as real and know the reactive or proactive tools to self-soothe are so key. And like when the first step is knowing how to validate yourself and say, okay, I feel this way. There's room for this thing. Okay, now what's going to help me move through this emotion? And then pairing those two and having kind of like pairings for different kinds of emotions almost in your back pocket. So, you know, reactively, hey, I'm going through anger. What's my best tool here? I'm going through sadness. What's my best tool here? I'm feeling judged. What's my best tool here? And just really knowing like what your best coping skills are for each situation that presents. So what is something you would want to say to your younger, maybe 15-year-old self?
So there are lots of things I would say to my younger self, and oftentimes I'll write a letter to her because I find that very healing, even if it may sound strange to some people, writing letters to different parts of yourself. But I would say that everything will be okay. Just live one moment to the next moment, one moment at a time. And you don't have to have everything figured out. God has a plan for you, and keep turning to God because, like, as in the Quran, it says, truly in the remembrance of God do hearts find peace. And as long as you stay connected to your faith and God, you're going to be okay. And lastly, it's a sign of strength to ask for help, and people want to support you. So don't hesitate to keep reaching out.
Mm-hmm. I've seen before, that's all really powerful advice. People have said to me, well, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to bother other people. And then my question is, well, if I came to you, would you want to help me? And they say, oh yeah, I'd want to help you right away. So why don't you deserve the same kind of treatment? Why don't you deserve people who want to help you? If you want to help other people, why can't you expect others to want to do the same?
Exactly. It's such a beautiful reframe that I've used as well. And oftentimes when people have come to me with their own vulnerability, I see it as such a gift. Like, wow, now they're trusting me and I can relate to them. And it's this beautiful connection. So turning it the other way, it's like my vulnerability or me asking somebody else for help is also a gift to them, not a burden.
Thank you so much.